God, she has allergic rhinitis and conjunctivitis? The medical term for hay fever? Is there a priest on call? She doesn't have long. That is how healthy Kamala Harris is. Donald Trump is reduced to calling her allergies a very messy and dangerous situation.
Desi Lydic didn't begin the segment with charts or medical data. Instead, she started with something far more unusual: Donald Trump's own words, displayed across the screen in oversized letters, declaring that he was in perfect health. The statement was clearly intended to shut down every question before it could even be asked. Not good, not strong, not fit to serve. Perfect. That single word was what caught Desi's attention. She left it on the screen long enough for the audience to start laughing on its own, before saying that the moment anyone claims perfection, reality immediately begins searching for cracks in the story. That was her opening point. Trump had recently cited White House medical reports, cognitive exam results, and glowing assessments of his stamina as evidence that concerns about his age and health were unfair. His physician described him as fit to serve and in excellent condition, and Trump repeated those conclusions with the enthusiasm of someone reading a glowing 5-star review about himself. But Desi noticed something many older viewers recognized immediately. Medical reports are supposed to reassure the public, not become material for applause. She then displayed 3 words on the screen: health, proof, performance. Pointing to health, she said every president deserves fairness and a reasonable level of medical privacy. Moving to proof, she argued that voters also deserve honest transparency from the person entrusted with the nation's highest responsibilities. Finally, she pointed to performance and observed that Trump has a habit of treating any document that praises him as a trophy, while dismissing anything less favorable as part of a conspiracy. The studio suddenly fell silent.
From epidermal fragility, but we don't know anything more because he's never released his medical records. Perhaps one of his minions could explain why that's not a problem.
For Americans over the age of 65, the message carried a different meaning. They understand that doctor's appointments aren't political events. They know growing older isn't something to be ashamed of. Sore joints, prescription medications, memory screenings, routine checkups, and follow-up tests are simply part of life. Getting examined isn't the unusual part. Acting as though an ordinary medical evaluation proves you're somehow superhuman, that's what feels strange. Then Desi reached the segment's turning point. She played clips of Trump proudly saying he had aced his cognitive exams. Rather than making fun of the test itself, she calmly explained that cognitive screenings are basic medical tools doctors often use to detect possible concerns. Passing one is certainly reassuring, but celebrating it as though it were an Olympic gold medal changes the conversation. Instead of simply comforting people, it makes them wonder why proving it seems so important in the first place.
Healthcare plan, that's the name. It's called the Great Healthcare because it's great healthcare at a lower price. Mandates unprecedented accountability and transparency from insurance companies and all healthcare providers so that special interests can no longer profiteer at your expense.
The audience reacted with a quiet murmur because they could feel the discussion shifting. Then Desi delivered the line that transformed the entire segment. If the exam is basic enough to reassure physicians, why is Trump talking about it as if he won a Nobel Prize? The room immediately burst into laughter. That was the heart of her argument. Trump wanted people to hear the phrase cognitive test and think genius. Desi wanted them to hear the same words and remember the proper context. A cognitive screening doesn't measure presidential judgment, wisdom, discipline, patience, or honesty. It doesn't tell voters whether a leader listens to experts, respects limits, or remains calm under pressure. It answers one narrow medical question. Everything else must be demonstrated through leadership itself. Next, Trump's response appeared on the screen, filled with capital letters and anger, directed at those questioning him. Desi read only the phrase perfect health, then folded the paper. She explained that perfect is a risky word for any politician, because it leaves no room for ordinary reality. Saying someone is in excellent health invites discussion. Saying they're fit to serve allows voters to evaluate the claim. But saying someone has perfect health sounds less like a medical assessment and more like a branding campaign. Older viewers immediately understood her point. They had spent decades watching public figures hide ordinary human limitations behind polished language. They remembered a time when presidents released medical summaries, reporters asked difficult questions, and families cared more about honesty than impossible standards. No one expects someone approaching 80 years old to have the body of a 25-year-old. They simply expect the truth. Then Desi broadened the discussion. She argued that Trump approaches nearly every subject the same way. The crowd wasn't simply large, it was the largest. The economy wasn't merely good, it was the greatest. The phone call wasn't acceptable, it was perfect. And now, his health wasn't excellent, it was perfect. The pattern wasn't about medicine, it was about exaggeration through language. Once she pointed out that pattern, Trump's health claims sounded completely different. It no longer came across as a straightforward medical update. Instead, it sounded like another attempt to force ordinary facts to fit his favorite superlative. Finally, she looked directly into the camera and delivered the line that froze the room. A healthy president can admit he's human. An insecure one needs the paperwork to salute. For a full second, the studio was completely still. Then the applause broke out. By the end of the segment, Desi hadn't diagnosed Trump, criticized his age, or mocked his physical condition. Instead, she focused on the performance surrounding the claim itself. Perfect health wasn't the proof, it was the giveaway. And that's why Trump's attempt to reassure the public ended up having the opposite effect on live television. What was meant to project confidence instead made reassurance sound like insecurity. And the audience understood exactly why that distinction mattered.